Today with Talking Scuba, I'm going to be answering a few questions that I get from non-divers. I belong to BSAC, the British Sub Aqua Club, and we have a boat, a RHIB, based at Littlehampton Marina. This is it here. One of the coolest features of a RHIB are the inflatable side tubes, which make the boat very, very safe. And the fiberglass bottom makes it a very stable craft and quite quick in the water, so we can get to the dive sites reasonably quickly. Most of our dives are on sunken shipwrecks, and most of these wrecks that we dive on are within 45 minutes of Littlehampton Marina. And purely for comfort and safety, we tend not to go out when the weather is too bad. The club has guidelines as to when the boat can and can't go out, weather conditions. So when a dive is posted on the club website, it is always subject to the weather. If the seas are too rough, it just makes for an uncomfortable drive out to the wreck. And again, if the seas are a bit rough, it makes picking up the divers out of the water a little bit hazardous. If the boat's moving around too much, it can get a bit hairy. So nice and smooth is always the order of the day. And sunny is always good as well. The RHIB itself is equipped with all of the required safety equipment. It has a ship-to-shore radio, GPS so we can find the wrecks, and all of the safety equipment that you'd expect, not just for a RHIB going out to sea, but for the safety of the divers as well. We carry pure oxygen, a first aid kit, and all of those great things. And it also goes without saying that those that are handling the boat are trained and qualified to do so. There's a course that anyone wanting to skipper the boat has to go through, and a lot of practice as well. Not just driving the boat and finding the wreck, but in collecting the divers out of the water and dropping them in safely on the marker buoy as well. So scuba diving is more than just jumping in the water and getting wet. Saying that, if you just want to pitch up with your gear, jump on the boat, go for a dive and come back, then that's fine as well, absolutely fine. Now this trip we're going on here was onto a wreck called the Gascony. It was sunk in January 1918, and at the time there was some confusion as to whether its end was brought about by a torpedo or a mine, but post-war examination of some U-boat records confirmed that in fact it was a torpedo fired by the UC-75. So these wrecks are fascinating. Unfortunately, on this particular dive, down at little under 30 metres, the visibility was so atrocious I didn't get any pictures. So this first part of the video is about us going out to the wreck and coming back. The second part of the video is on another wreck called the Northcoates, which I did get some pictures of. So if you want to see some underwater pictures, hang on in there. Depending on whether we're returning on a high or low tide. If the tide's out, getting back into Littlehampton Harbour takes a little bit of care. Even the RHIB has trouble coming in on a really low tide. So we can sometimes take a few minutes to get ourselves into the entrance to the harbour here. But once we get going, coming back is normally fairly straightforward. And the following day, we're heading out to a wreck called the Northcoates, another wreck down at about the 30-metre mark. The sea is looking to be nice and smooth, so we'll probably travel out at close to 20 knots, which means we'll probably be at the wreck site in about 30 minutes. Not too long at all. And very, very pleasant out on the sea on a nice day like this. It really is good fun. And once you've done half a dozen dives or so, You get to know the regular divers, and it's quite interesting having a catch up, seeing what everyone's been doing, what kit they bought that week, and generally talking about diving and great stuff like that. Some of us belong to more than one club and dive sometimes at some different wrecks, so it's interesting to talk about where the visibility underwater is slightly better, different wrecks, different depths and different equipment that people use. You might notice, interestingly, that all of the divers are zipped into their dry suits. They have their dry suits on completely zipped up. Now, this isn't because we're cold or it's windy, it's a completely different reason. In fact, in the summer, when it's warm on those few occasional days, it gets quite hot inside the dry suits. The reason is safety. If one of the divers should inadvertently fall in the water, if the suit isn't completely sealed, it will fill with water. Now, this on its own is not necessarily a bad thing. These neoprene suits float, they're quite buoyant. So it isn't the fear of disappearing under the waves that means we have to be zipped up. It means that when the wetsuit fills with water, it's very, very difficult, in fact impossible, to climb back up the ladder. You can't get back out of the water unless you get out of your suit. So the suits are always done up properly before we set off. And here we are, as promised, the underwater bit of the scuba diving. This is the reason that we all go. We go there to get wet and have a hunt around these fascinating shipwrecks. You probably can't notice in this video, but my buddy doesn't have any bubbles coming out, unlike me. And that's because he's using a rebreather. He doesn't vent his spare gas, he recirculates it. And this means for him that he can stay down at quite considerable depths for a long time. Air isn't the limiting factor. He can stay down, I think, on that piece of equipment for 3 odd hours and not run out of air. But that's not the subject of today's little video. One of the questions I am often asked is, how deep do we go? You know, what is the maximum depth that we're allowed to go down to as a scuba diver? Well, the answer to that is we only go down as deep as we want to. The first level of certification for a scuba diver is 20 metres. And with a bit of extra training and some more certification and a bit more experience, you can work your way up to, or down to, 40 metres. And for most recreational divers, 40 metres is plenty. Once we go beyond 40 metres, it gets more technical. It goes beyond the realms of a recreational dive. And for most of us here on the south coast of England, 40 metres is plenty. The seabed varies between 20 and 40 metres, and most of the wrecks fall between that range. So there's no need really to go any deeper. It might be interesting to know that scuba divers do go down to 100 metres, but you have different equipment, different gases, and it's a much more complicated dive. You cannot just come up from 100 metres to the surface without some compulsory decompression stops, and these need to be calculated well before the dive. So if you're thinking of taking up scuba diving as a hobby, it's great fun. You start off at 20 metres, there's plenty to see at that depth. But it's like all things, once you start this journey, you can carry on for as far as you want to go. So this particular wreck, the Northcoates at 30 metres, fits in very, very well. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you like it, leave a few comments, click a thumbs up, subscribe even if you want to, and you can watch the next fascinating instalment. But keep safe, keep diving.